Thank you very much, Councilmember Sorensen. Councilmember McDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you also to the public who's been engaging in this discussion in the recent, since our workshop, but also as community members for the last few years. I really appreciate my colleagues' thoughtfulness and their willingness to expedite this study regardless of what happens on this exact agenda item. Just to give voice to that particular neighborhood. 17 houses being torn down in the last handful of years doesn't feel like it's come out of nowhere for me. I'm sure that's mostly because I'm a very accessible and visible council member in that neighborhood. So I am grateful that I can go back to those community members and say that we're going to do the work, we're going to do good work, and I really appreciate Councilmember Parkhill's optimism that perhaps we could get it done quicker.
Thank you.
That attitude. So I just really appreciate the community listening to the residents' concern. Mayor, for being willing to push to create some action. And I am very optimistic we're going to come up with a really great solution that will benefit our builder community, but also, and very importantly, our residents.
Yeah. Well said, and well said by all of you. Your comments, as Councilmember McDonald said, are very thoughtful and appreciated. And we don't take moratoriums lightly. We don't take emergency moratoriums lightly. In my 10 years on the council, I think we've enacted 2. And when we discussed in a workshop, even the notion of having one, it was, we could have had a moratorium for 12 months. And we said collectively, we were all in agreement, absolutely not. If we're going to do this, we are going to put our foot on the accelerator. I'm really impressed that the community thought we were moving fast, because normally the complaint is government moves so slow. So, you win some, you lose some. But, it is, as someone who had lived in that specific neighborhood for over 20 years, I had seen the changes as well. And it's something that all of us care very deeply about, regardless of what neighborhood we live in. Each of our neighborhoods is special, and we want to preserve their uniqueness. And it's something that we wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't care. So, with that, I thank staff for bringing this forward, our city attorney, the community members as well for sharing. There were several community members in favor, right? Just, hey, can we stop for, a few months and just figure out what direction we're going to go, and over the course of like 90 days or something like that. And then there were some that are concerned about it. So, but that's what this process is about having these conversations and weighing all of the different impacts that can be felt. And again, the great thing is that even without the moratorium, we are looking at the issue, we are addressing the concerns of the community, and we are moving forward in an expedited way. I hope as expedited as Councilmember Parkhill suggested, but we shall see.
Right.
But in any case, I think that these conversations, they bear fruit, regardless of whether they pass or not at the end of the day. So it doesn't sound as if the moratorium, if we could get the second reading language up there, doesn't sound like it will pass. However, I would still need a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of ordinance 842A, approving a moratorium on redevelopment in the R3A zoning district.
And Madam Mayor, just to add to that, approval needs a majority, so that's why if there's two council members, regardless of who they are and how it is, it doesn't pass. And if it doesn't pass, then essentially the moratorium fails because they need to be, the second reading needs to be passed sequentially at the next meeting after the first meeting. So if a majority doesn't vote for it tonight, the moratorium fails.
Yes, if we have a split vote, it does not pass because we need two successful votes back to back on the same issue. We can't tweak words or anything else. So,
Exactly.
as is. So would someone care to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a second? I will second the motion. Is there any further discussion? Let's take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Councilmember Parkhill?
No.
Councilmember Sorensen?
Nay.
Mayor Mouton?
Aye. The motion does not pass. So we will move on to our next new business item. However, can you give a brief outline on the zoning, where that stands? So there was a presentation to Planning Commission yesterday. Can you talk a little bit about that timeline for that review?
Happy to, Madam Mayor. So there was, as you mentioned, a workshop that the Planning Commission had over this very topic. Good discussion. Heard it was a late night. That's good usually. So the next step is to do some more targeted engagement to both the neighborhood as well as developers, and ultimately capture the feedback from those groups, capture and summarize what we heard at the Planning Commission workshop, and bring that in the form of a proposed ordinance tweaks or amendments in a public hearing, which the entire area would know about and be sent notices. That could, the Planning Commission could take action on that at that meeting. Maybe they need more time, but once they take action on that, it would then be directed to the City Council. The earliest would be December. I'm not sure about the first meeting in December or the second meeting, probably the second, but we could have a vote from the council prior to the end of the year, which, that's 60 days, so that's not too bad.
Sure. Yeah, we gave ourselves 90.
Yep.
So we're in there.
And we want to make sure that we do it right and we get the we take time for the engagement. I still think we can meet that deadline, but it's going to be close. But if the Planning Commission needs to discuss it for another meeting, I still think we're going to meet that overall expectation.
Very good. Thank you. Yes.
So just clarify, what we're talking about is a vote to potentially amend the zoning ordinances,
Correct.
correct? Okay, and this might be a premature question, but what we study well, maybe we don't know the answer to this. I guess the question would be, would it apply to all R3A areas, or is that something to be determined through the study?
Any tweaks we do to a zoning district that's maybe specified for one area but encompasses a district in other parts of the community, it would apply to everybody.
City Manager, Madam Mayor, Councilmember, that very question was discussed at the workshop. So I think the City Manager is absolutely correct. That is one way that the change could be made. But I think there was a lot of discussion about how it was part of R3A that was the focus of council's concerns and would have been the subject or the area of the moratorium as well. And so there was discussion about, well, if we change something in this neighborhood to address a concern, what would the effect be over here? So the commission is looking at that. So I think it's a very relevant question.
Okay, thank you.
Hence why I don't know how quickly this can go, but we will remain optimistic. All right, very good. All right, well, we are still under new business. And next item for our consideration this evening is to consider approval of the first reading of ordinance 843 special events and adoption of resolution 45-2024 special event matrix. City manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to just introduce this topic, but then I'm going to hand it over to Public Works Director and City Engineer Mike Kelly to walk through a presentation and then answer any questions that you have. This whole topic has been a very collaborative process. We've had a lot of different departments involved in the city just because special events ultimately have oversight from many different departments. The city's attorney's office, police, fire, admin, and then ultimately it's led by Director Kelly too. So it's touched on a lot of parts. We've also done a lot of engagement too with primarily the chamber and Rick Bourne, who are known for having the most robust and frequent and biggest and successful events in town. So we felt that we wanted them to come along for the ride. We've had a lot of feedback from them. I think we've done a good job of incorporating a lot of it, maybe not all of it, but that's the balance, in terms of coming up with these things that really kind of balance what's best for the organization, improving processes, and is aligned with the level of activity that the community wants to see. And that's kind of the background there, is that this did come from the strategic plan, really addressing all three core strategic initiatives. Excellence in terms of developing processes and procedures that are streamlined and efficient. Our special event process has not been in the ordinance, so that leaves it a little bit murky when staff is wondering if we have the authority to approve things or if it should go to council. So tidying up that is really important. Maintaining that small town feel and balancing that, obviously with the level of activity in town, we want to make sure that we have some limits, some parameters on what the city ultimately considers and approves. So we'll talk about that briefly in the presentation. And then obviously the other big thing that we're always working on to reduce the burden of our taxpayers is to diversify revenue from other sources, whether that be additional taxes, fees, and this would actually increase the fees a modest amount on all of the events, not necessarily, one versus the other. We still need to work through that process, but we intend to front end some of the fee structure so we get paid for our admin costs no matter what, even if the event goes through. And then in addition to that, we're proposing that events that are ticketed and that are non-charitable and that are on public space be charged a small fee, either 1% or $1 per ticket. That offsets just some of the cost of public land that ultimately we bear that is not able to be utilized by, the residents of this community. So this item ultimately hits on many of our strategic initiatives. We have discussed it a few times over the past year. We think we made a lot of progress. We've had a lot of discussions from the council, a lot of different perspective. I think we've walked that tightrope well, but we're looking forward to get more feedback tonight. That's all I have. And if it's okay, Madam Mayor, Director Kelly has got some more details to go through.
Very good. Good evening, Mr. Kelly.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Thank you, Jeff, for the intro. I'm going to just start with a little bit of a background, just to make sure that everybody understands kind of the basis of where we're starting. We've been doing special events throughout the city for a number of years, and they're typically categorized into three different levels. Level 1 is in the range of 20 to 100 or so. Level 2 is 100 to about 500, and then level 3, which is our largest events, are 500 and above. Per this ordinance, we have laid it out that the two lower levels would have city manager approval, and only the larger events would then come to the city council. Those would be new events. We would obviously want to inform you and get your feedback on those types of events. Most recently, we've had a food truck festival that was suggested and tried to work that all out. We haven't seen that come to fruition yet, but I have a feeling it might come back. And then as we move forward, some of those other larger events, James J. Hill Days, maybe our concerts, the St. Patrick's Day event, would come forward to you for approval in a different way, more likely on a consent agenda. We're more familiar with those, so we don't see that there's a big need for discussion. Having those on consent agenda doesn't preclude them having to come back. There is a discussion about whether or not weather-related items and change of conditions might warrant a different approval or an additional approval by the council, and I think we're going to have to kind of feel that out a little bit as we go through. We experienced that this last year with the Chili Open, with changing weather conditions and trying to find a way to pull that event off. Unfortunately, this year we weren't able to do that, but that'll be the goal kind of moving forward. Hopefully those larger events and most frequent events that you're used to, you'll see on a consent agenda. Couple examples of each of those levels. Level 1, again, the small events, graduation parties, wedding receptions, those types of things that have an impact on parking and traffic on a roadway. If someone has 20 people at their home for a dinner party and they're parked in the driveway, no need for a special event. We're really just concerned about safety and management of the roadway. Level 2 events, and I do have a couple examples for some of these. For example, private property, we don't typically require a permit for those larger events unless it has, again, impacts. An example is the St. Bart's, I can't even remember what they call it. They have 2 events, or at least 2 events throughout the year where we typically help them with blocking off parking, using our City Hall parking lot. It requires some work with our Public Works Department, requires a permit. Level 2 events that we hold on our public property do require a permit and typically require Public Works assistance and/or overtime assistance, and some of those are the Community Church Easter service, Spring Splash, Music by the Lake, the Masonic Lodge Car Show, Blue Bash Dash, which I'll do a little plug for Becky, is coming up this weekend on Saturday. Our largest events are level 3 events. We don't typically have those large events on private property. Why? Because they take up a lot of space and we don't have those types of spaces, so they do overflow onto public property. Some of those are the Chili Open, McCormick's, Flying Pancake Breakfast, et cetera. Those do require quite a bit of coordination between Public Works and Public Safety and the applicant, and hence the need for a special event. Some of the things that we've updated since we've last chatted with you at our workshop are this matrix. It may be a little bit small on the screen to your right, but what we've tried to do in our last discussion, we talked about those level 2 and level 3 events and the overall frequency of those events, because the frequency of those events does have an impact on our staff. So we've updated it based on what we think can be managed and based on your feedback at our last workshop. So I'm going to start on the leftmost column, level 1 events. We're not too concerned about that. We don't want to limit how many of those events are held at any given time, so you'll see no limits throughout the year. Level 2 events, those medium-sized events, 100 to 500 people or so, don't usually see much request for those events kind of at the beginning or end of the year. So we're focused more on that May through September timeframe. The next column, which is red, is just an example of what we typically see for special events at any given time for that level. You can see we don't have that many events between April and September. There are a couple that carry over. For example, the Music by the Lake, which is held at the depot by the Rotary. That carries over from June to July, 6 different events over 6 different evenings. What we've put together, kind of based on our past experience, is that we don't want to see more than 3 events that would take more than 7 days total. So when you think about that Music by the Lake, 1 month, 4 days of that month still allows for 3 other one-day events, and that's sort of how it works out. So if that makes any sense, I can pause if there are any questions. We don't want to see any more than 3 events that last 7 days in total. So they could be spread out through the month. It might be a 2-day event that would fit into that category. Are there any questions on that before I move on? Shaking heads, perfect. Level 3 events, the large events, this is where we see the most activity with our public works and public safety in coordination with the applicant. Not very many in the early months, and probably good times for those, particularly the Chili Open, when we're looking for activity in those times of the year. When we get into that June to September, we start to see more activity throughout town, and I'll use Public Works as an example. We have a lot of other things going on too, but we do our best to help out with these larger events. And based on some of your feedback, we feel that 2 of those larger events in any given month is probably about the right size. When you look at our examples, some of those have large impact on our downtown, and some of them are larger events that fit that category but don't have as big an impact. I'll use the Tour de Tonka, for example. We do have volunteers from our Public Works and Public Safety that help out on that morning, but it's a very short impact for the city of Wayzata. Large group of people coming through, but it's only about an hour or so impact. So not a big deal. We might be able to handle another larger activity in August, for example. So we want to give the flexibility of a couple opportunities. Any new activity would come to you for approval. The other update that I wanted to give you is, as Jeff mentioned, is ticketed events. What we have suggested in our ordinance, or will be suggested in the fee schedule that goes with the ordinance, it's not actually in the ordinance, would be a ticket fee for those events that are held on public property and are for non-charitable organizations. So what we are currently suggesting is a $1 per ticket or 1%, whichever is greater.
How many of these would be impacted by that?
Right now, I think the only thing that would be impacted would be the concert series.
Okay.
When I say that, the concerts, the Beach Bash, and the Wham Fest. And
McCormick's?
Excuse me?
McCormick's? Would that, there are no ticket sales, I
There's
suppose?
no tickets that I'm aware of for that.
Okay.
I think we've talked about some other smaller activities, and I'm not sure how they would fit in. I think the Rails and Ales as part of James J. Hill Days is a ticketed event. Not sure how many tickets that actually has, but potential.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because there's a stipulation that says that the city manager or staff could waive ticket events that are done by a charitable organization or, community partner. And that's a good example of one that would be led by the chamber, which, proceeds go back into the chamber. So I would intend on waiving the fee for that type of event.
So you're talking about for any nonprofit?
No, and that's exactly why that gives us a little bit of flexibility that maybe it's a nonprofit that, for whatever reason, isn't consistent with our city's values or something like that. So that's exactly why it says the city has the ability to waive that requirement for charitable organizations.
Could we get some clarification from the city attorney? I'm not sure I fully follow that explanation. So it says charitable organization. Could we define charitable organization? I assumed it was a nonprofit. Is there a different definition that we're applying?
So, Madam Mayor and Manager Dahl, I guess I think maybe the best way to understand it is to actually look at the language in the proposed ordinance, and it's on page 158 of your packet. It's section 51409. And as Director Kelly said, if it's a ticketed level 2 or 3 events that require tickets to entry and they're held on public property in whole or part, then there will be a fee established for that by resolution. But then the sentence that the city manager is referring to is that the city may reduce or waive that fee for events that are charitable or have a significant fundraising component for a nonprofit, community, or civic organization. So those aren't, I mean, I can give you a legal definition of what a nonprofit organization is, but community or civic, I think, will be in the judgment of the council. So what I contemplated when we were working on this language with staff is that when these events are issued a special event permit, we'll know at the time if it's going to be a ticketed event. And if so, you know, are they requesting a fee waiver, or should we give them one and staff will make a recommendation to council? If it's a council-approved event, or the city manager will make that call based on his understanding of council wishes or language in our policy. I mean, I think this is one of the things that our policy will flesh out a little bit more in the coming year. So that's my explanation of that language and I think how it would work and give the city the flexibility to make the kind of decisions on a case-by-case basis for these events.
Perfect. Can we talk a little bit, do you have more to cover,
Got one.
Director Kelly?
Got one more slide.
Okay.
And it's really just about next steps, so I'll just jump to it, and then happy to take any questions that you may have. So, should this move forward upon approval of a first and second reading and publication, 2 outstanding items that we just need to polish up. One is amending the fee schedule based on some conversation that we'll likely have on ticketed events, which I have there as the third bullet. We will update our permit fees, as Manager Dahl had mentioned. We are looking to add a permit application fee to help cover some of the administrative costs that happen up front, whether a permit actually happens or not. We want to try to recoup some of those costs, and then we will slightly update our permit fees to reflect potentially that combination of application fee and permit fee. The second thing is to update our special event policy. It's more of a back-of-house document. Right now, we have an application form and kind of the requirements of how to prepare that form, other things that an applicant may want to take into account as they're considering applying for a permit. For example, are they going to have tents? Are they going to have alcohol, food, fireworks that may require other permits in addition to a special event permit? We just want to lay out all of the information that a potential applicant can find it all in one place. And in addition to that, we'd like to update our application forms. So with that, those things would move forward. I'm going to kick to the slide that says, this is what we're considering tonight, approval of the draft ordinance that's in the packet, Ordinance 843, and that special event matrix, which we would approve via Resolution 45-2024. And with that, I think City Attorney, City Manager, and myself are happy for any questions you have.
Thank you, Director Kelly. Questions of staff or City Attorney? No? Yes, Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Kelly, could you scoot back to your table? A couple of follow-up questions on it. So just a clarification question, existing level 3 events, if that's an existing event, we've had it yet last year, the year before, the council will see it on the consent agenda. If it's a new event, it will come and have a presentation and a discussion.
Correct.
Okay. In terms of the existing level, or any level 2, or maybe any level 2 event, how do we verify the actual number of participants? I look at 2 in particular on your existing level 2 events column, the Masonic Lodge Car Show. That has a significant impact on the community, and I see that event as a growing event too, so I'm wondering how we sort of keep track of that. And then also right below that with the Boo Bash Dash, are we counting the number of dashers, or are we also counting the number of trick-or-treaters, because that also has a significant impact on the downtown commercial area. So curious, is this you tell us and we take your word for it, or how are we verifying these attendance numbers?
I think that's a great question, Councilmember McDonald, Mayor. We look at the application form and what we think the participation is going to be based on that application. I think we always understand, in fact, we had some comments this year on the car show that it appeared larger than last year and was spreading a little bit from a standpoint of, we had some of the people that were showing off their vehicles that were camping out on the trail and other things that were impacting other things related to our normal, everyday operations of the city. So we will follow up with them on trying to get a better number of participants. I think we would look for some feedback on how do we want to define participants? Is it simply those that are participating in the event, or is it the people that come to participate in not just showing off their car, but looking at the cars? For example.
Right, because I think of James J. Hill days where, you know, you have 75,000 people. That's not, those are eyeballs and feet on the ground, not necessarily participants. So I'm just curious. Sounds
City
like
attorney.
City attorney has a
Yes,
good response.
Madam Mayor, you know, so I think Director Kelly's right. We're going to have to take the information that applicants give us, and our staff will need to have some reasonable verification. Just wanted to point out that the ordinance itself defines these level events, and the language used there is that, for example, level 1 event means a special event that is anticipated to have 20 to 99 participants and/or spectators. So I think it's taking, the defined term here is really taking the big picture view, like how many people is this event anticipated to draw? So I think we'll listen to what the applicants tell us. We'll know historical data from previous years for recurring events, and any other data, I think, that staff feels is relevant in making that determination.
Is the fee different for a level 2 versus a level 3? And is there language in there that someone has a super successful event and instead of 200, they have 2,000? Do we have the ability to go back to them because we suddenly had to call in more staff and address concerns because it grew so much bigger than anybody could have anticipated on the front end?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways. I think, first of all, I want to stress that when we have these larger events that require either public safety or public works participation in the event, we are reimbursed for those services. The applicant is made aware that in order for this to kick off successfully, they're going to need some additional help and they're going to need to pay for that. So, for example, the Boo Bash Dash, we will have several public works employees and police and fire that will be participating in that event so that it runs smoothly. I think we're going to look to them to kind of ensure some of the overall size of the event. I want to point out the Boo Bash Dash, for example, 275 participants I actually pulled off of their registered runners from last year. So that has to do with runners. That is how many people actually ran in the 3 events that they hold. We know that there are people that are standing along the route and cheering people on, and there are kids and activities that are happening down along the Great Lawn, so we'll look for them for some additional information. Fee-wise, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to hold off and not bring an updated fee schedule at this time, because we want to make sure that we're right-sizing the events and the levels as they should be before we bring that back to you.
So would there be an ability then if an event was significantly larger, I'm going to use the term clawback, but it's not really a clawback, right? I mean, to go back to the applicant and say,
Right.
you
Right.
anticipated this number, but it was significantly larger, and the fee should have been this based
Right.
on actual attendance.
Right. I think that's a great question, Madam Mayor, and I think Director Kelly has articulated one way that we would address that by seeking reimbursement for that extra tax on services, the extra expenses the city incurred. But we'll think about this question more, and I think can flesh it out in the policy document that we're working on. But one of the things that comes to mind, I mean, if somebody applies for a special event permit for a level 2 event, that's all they are authorized legally to hold. So I would say that, the folks holding the permits, having these events, have a responsibility to keep it within that range. And if it goes way above it, I mean, we would have lots of legal tools to get them to make the city whole, in whatever way we need to be.
Okay. No, that's fair. Councilmember McDonald, we kind of diverted away
No,
from your original question.
The diversion was appropriate, and I think I got more clarification than I initially realized I needed, so thank you.
Very good. Others? Anybody?
I just have one question. So we have a cap on the number of level 2 and 3 events. And there's some little bit language in here, but maybe just to clarify, if another entity came to the city and it was pretty compelling, we'd want to consider that. Is that a city manager decision to move it ahead to council, or does it automatically get moved, or kind of where's the authoritative line on kind of who makes the call?
City attorney?
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Councilmember, I can take that. That is something that we looked at specifically. It's almost think of it as it's not a variance, but
Yeah.
we don't want to miss a great opportunity. So if you look at the matrix itself, which is on page 161, there's a paragraph there at the top that, this is sort of I don't want you to think about it as a floor you're setting, but this is, this matrix is sort of the numbers council is establishing as, hey, this is a good baseline for what we think the community can handle and would enjoy and is good. But that last line in that introductory paragraph says that special events outside these parameters, meaning more frequent or larger numbers or whatever, may be approved by city council, but the applicant would need to show you that it meets all the normal criteria in the code. It's not going to tax city resources. It's not going to be all the things we don't want it to be and all the things we do want it to be. And then the second thing, it wouldn't negatively impact other previously approved events. So those are the two things you would look at as council in determining, well, yeah, we could probably fit another event in July because the nature of that event wouldn't affect the other ones that are going on in July. They're on that side of town. This event is way on that side of town, or whatever the applicant could show.
So if it met this criteria, would it automatically go to city council for
It needs to go to city council.
action?
Yeah, anything outside of this matrix, one of the reasons you're reviewing and approving it tonight is this is set by council and can essentially be amended or supplemented or something beyond this. So even, something that was a level, I'm trying to think of something the city, level 2 event that the city manager would normally approve. He couldn't go beyond these numbers without council approval.
Okay, thank you.
And that holds true whether it's on public or private property. So if somebody had a 501 person wedding and required a special permit, and it was going to last the better part of a day, right? And we already have 2 events that month, it would come to city council for approval.
It would. I will say, Madam Mayor, Council, that we tried to do our best to anticipate what those numbers might be. If someone came to us and said, I have 501 people coming to our wedding, I think I would have a conversation with the manager and we would talk about what we felt was the appropriate permit fee for that particular event. If it's 800, it's obviously going to be a level 3 event, and we would handle it that way. I think the reason that we want to keep those level 1 and level 2 at least beginning with the city manager approval is the discretion to determine and have a little bit of flexibility in some of those. We've had some this year that we've dealt with where small wedding, I'm going to have about 20 people. Well, I'm not going to argue.
But I'm talking about,
Yep.
we understand that, but we're talking about level 3 event. Is somebody at their home was having, it's on private property, but there is impact to the city. They're coming forward for a special event permit, but it's in June,
Yep.
and we only allow 2. I don't remember what the 2 items are in June, but are we then making a determination as a council, yes, we're going to allow that to happen, or something else needs to be taken off the docket?
I think we would look at that,
Attorney.
and I think the language that City Attorney Schalzel had mentioned gives you that flexibility to add.
You can make an exception.
So that's true, Madam Mayor. I would say the other thing, if you look at the definition of special event's entirely on private property that, as the Director Kelly and Manager Dahl look at, that don't really have significant impacts to parking on public streets and that sort of thing, they may not require a special event permit. They might fall outside the definition of that. I could read you the language, but that's the general idea.
Well, 2 examples come to mind, which I think bear discussion. We have the Parade of Homes, very impactful. It is spread out, but the impact is really big. So let's just assume that that draws definitely more than 500 people. So that's one example. The second, which I didn't see on the list, and maybe they haven't done it in a couple of years, but for a time, we had the Cambria concert. I call them the Cambria concerts. I don't know what the official title was. Also very impactful. So those situations, again, assuming we don't allow more than 1 or 2 according to this chart, you're telling me there's flexibility with those or not? Because I'm hearing 2 different things, and so I'm not clear. I'm told we're bound to this and that it's going to come back to the council, but I'm also hearing, well, except maybe the city manager can decide. So can we just put that to rest? Yes, no, maybe?
So, Madam Mayor, if it's above what is allowed in this matrix, I would have to bring it back to you on a city council agenda for that event that you're describing, the 500 and so. If it's on a private property, if it's 500 people, 95% chance it's going to have a neighbor impact. So that would come to the city council. And if it seems reasonable, we'd recommend approval and, I think it would get passed that way.
Deal with it if and when the time comes,
Correct.
but understanding that that may come forward,
Absolutely.
given just kind of the nature of some of the events that take place here in town. Fundraisers and
Yep.
weddings and stuff. Okay. Excellent. Great question.
And Madam Mayor,
And I don't mean to belabor the point, but I was like, wait a second, I'm not quite grasping.
no, they're good questions, and there's not a formula or matrix that's gonna really capture everything. We've talked about this, but I think we've landed in a pretty good spot where we can deal with exceptions. And the city attorney, Schalzel, can talk a little bit more about the home tour that the city attorney specifically added to address concerns about that unique dynamic there.
I was just using it as
Oh,
a
okay.
representative example. Thank you. I'm good. Other questions, Councilmember Sorensen? Councilmember Parkhill? No? I have a few. Surprise. Fire department breakfast.
Yeah, it's great.
We're going to have to move it. It looks like we're only allowed 2, but we have 3 in September.
Yeah, so that's a great example of either one of them would have to come back to the council for approval. Maybe that's too much. Maybe we look at that and say, hey, fire department, do it in a different month, or hey, beach bash, do it at a different time. So, it's a lot going on over that, those couple of weeks in town. So that's not the worst case. That's not a bad thing to have those discussions about maybe that isn't the best time. The other option in that specific circumstance is the Beach Bash and James J. Hill Days are they're adjoining, so that might make sense to consider that one event too. But we'd talk with Becky and Rick to see what makes sense there.
Mayor, could I follow up a question on that exact point? Is, I apologize. I was reading something on the level 2 event.
No worries. Okay. Refresh my memory. We had talked about this earlier in the year. We wrote in how many days in advance of an event that applications need to be submitted and finalized, and where did we land on that?
Varies between
The level?
each level, but is it, Mike, is it 90, 60, and 30?
Yeah, I want to say it's 30, 60, 90. It's exactly what it is.
30 for the lower level events? Okay.
Correct.
And then how do we address changes to applications once we're, yes?
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, one caveat to that, that's the general rule, but you can improve otherwise, and we added that language, particularly, in conversations with the chamber and thinking through what happened this year with the warm winter we had and its impact on the Chili Open. The chamber made the case that, they might have to come back and get an amendment to their application if there's change or conditions. So they'll always have the freedom to do that at your discretion when the case is made for that. But we want the default rule to be that 30, 60, 90 days for the different levels of events.
Well, and I think everybody's sympathetic to the fact that there can be extenuating circumstances that occur. However, we want it to be the exception and not
Yes.
the rule.
Correct.
Right? And then it's like, oh, well, and that goes for any special event, because then it leaves all the staff scrambling to try and adjust and adapt to those potential changes. So, City Attorney, can you talk a little bit about what are the mechanisms or levers that we have to discourage? I think I know I said this 30 days ago, but, we're 3 days before an event, and I've decided, I want to amend I'm pulling numbers, but what are we doing to dissuade that?
Well, Madam Mayor, I think the rules are laid out in the ordinance. I think there can probably be some language in the policy that staff will be working on to discourage applicants and communicate perhaps more clearly, like, we need a complete application for your event in these timeframes specified in the ordinance. If you need to come back because of significant changes, material changes to conditions on the ground, and the Chili Open is a good example of that. Under the policy, that would be a good reason. We didn't get that granular in the ordinance, just because I think we wanted time to really think through that and get it right, and also have the flexibility to develop that as we see how this ordinance works as we implement it. But I think that would be the idea.
I think that, I'd be supportive of that in the policy, especially if Director Kelly, you take kind of the lead on the receipt of those special event permits and changes. If there are amendments, material changes that require your time, your staff's time to review, same with police and fire, that there are associated fees for a re-review. I don't know what the technical term would be, but
Yeah, I think we would want to do that. And at the same time, we want to be respectful of the fact that we know that an event's coming. We only hold 2 city council meetings each month, and trying to fit an approval process into that before an event gets challenging. So we're going to have to figure out how to craft that into the policy. But I think that that's the appropriate spot for it. We want to offer the flexibility if conditions change.
Absolutely.
And if we can manage the changes. For example,
Right.
Chili Open, we had a handful of options that we probably could have handled to some degree. Mother Nature was the hardest and most impossible to
Right.
handle this year.
But that's,
Yep.
you know, whether conditions outside of our control are one thing, and that's not what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I'm talking about, you know, other material changes that are self-imposed. And so I think it would be appropriate for us to consider if it takes a re-review, right? There's a material change to the application, that there's a fee associated with that to cover the cost of your time and other staff's time. Have we incorporated these, it has nothing to do with the ordinance, but looking forward to facilitate the submission, these applications, an online mechanism for submitting these documents?
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure if that'll be ready for 2025, but that is the ultimate goal, is to be able to add it to our online permitting system. I think the challenge is, because of the unique nature of each of the events, it's hard to make it as simple as a form, because there requires a lot of conversation and determination on whether or not it even needs a permit before getting to that point. But yes, if we are able to get it to an online completion process, we would love to do that, yes.
That would be great. Okay. Well, thank you. Did my questions spur any additional questions? No? Okay. Very good. So if we could go back then. We've had our questions. We did have a card from Ms. Pearson from the Chamber. Have you decided whether you would like to come forward? I was holding this in the event. Yes.
Okay, since you brought it
Okay.
up. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council Member, sorry for that. Can I just submit this in case? So, anyway, no, I don't have any comments prepared or anything like that, but I just wanted to mention a couple of things since we have been very involved in conversations on this topic and appreciate that we're spending more time with it. But I just wanted to make a couple of points. We may not appreciate all of the revenue goals that the city has in terms of fees, so I will acknowledge that. But we do appreciate that we have been a part of these conversations and have had an opportunity to provide some insight and ideas, particularly because we have been working together for so many years. So I do appreciate that we've been a part of that, and I do feel that the outcome will be the best document and ordinance that we can all work from going forward. So in those regards, I just wanted to say I appreciate the process and being a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. And that was Ms. Pearson, that's okay, from the Chamber, the Greater Wayzata Area Chamber of Commerce. I don't know the address. I should, but I do.
Depot.
Yes. Yes, affectionately known as the Depot. So thank you for those comments. Appreciate it. All right, so that leads us then to this evening, where we are considering approval and would need a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 843, special events, and adoption of resolution 45-20. Are we going to do two separate votes, City Attorney?
Madam Mayor, I'm comfortable with you doing one vote, a motion. on
One
both these.
motion?
Yes.
Okay. So a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 843, special events, and adoption of resolution 45-2024, special event matrix.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
The motion has been first and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. And that takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is our city manager's report.
You, Madam Mayor, a couple things tonight. I would say the most important thing tonight is to make the community, make the council, make folks watching aware of a celebration that we're having on November 20th, and that is to honor our beloved police chief, Mark Schultz, who is retiring.
Beloved.
Beloved.
I think he's blushing.
I had the, we've got a little flyer that I guess I didn't put in the folder for this meeting. It is the 21st, sorry, I got that date wrong. It's Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. here in the community room. There'll be some treats and just a lot of people here to celebrate and wish the chief well onto his next phase. He's decided that the city of Wayzata is a little bit less important than his family, his beautiful new granddaughter, and we're going to miss him, but it's a pretty dang good excuse to say goodbye. So he's served the community, he's served the city of Roseville and in other areas for several decades now, so I'm excited, sad, but excited to show our collective appreciation for his service. So again, Thursday, November 21st, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. here at City Hall. Next up, just a reminder that we have one council meeting in November. So we've got the election on the front end of November on the 5th, and then we have the holiday, Thanksgiving towards the latter part of the month. So our next council meeting will be on November 12th. So just so the council and everybody else knows at home, November 12th. Speaking of the election, obviously that's on November 5th. City Hall will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for people that want to vote in person. If you want to vote early, and we've got a consistent and increasing flow here at City Hall for people who are wanting to vote early, come over to City Hall if you're a resident during normal business hours. In addition to our normal business hours, which are 7 a.m. to 4:30 Monday through Thursday and 7 a.m. to 11 Friday, we have extended hours on November 4th, the day before the election, until 5 p.m. And then also we offer Saturday voting. This Saturday on the 26th, we will be open from 9 to 3 p.m. And then November 2nd and 3rd, actually, we will be open from 9 to 3 p.m. as well. All that's on our website, but so go to our website if you're listening at home if you want a little bit more clarity. But the point of the story is there's plenty of opportunity. We're going to be open extended period of time for folks to either vote early or come in on election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Is that just in case nobody knew there was an election going?
Yeah, who knew? Locally and nationally,
Yeah.
Get out and vote. And if you're not really excited to do that, hopefully you are, but you can meet Kathy Learvig and her wonderful group because they're the best, and they'll take care of you well.
Wayzata is definitely the smoothest operation
100%. Yep.
when it comes to coming in and casting your ballot.
They're the best.
Amazing.
One last thing is, it was briefly mentioned tonight, on Saturday is our Boo Bash Dash and a bunch of other festivities. So if you don't mind, we've got President Pearson in the house. If she could just do a quick summary of what's going to happen on Saturday. She can do it much better than I could, I'm sure.
You're really enjoying putting people on the spot tonight.
It's really nice. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. We'll talk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, and staff. Becky Pearson, and 402 East Lake Street in the Devon is where I work.
Thank you.
Catch up. So yes, this Saturday is the Boo Bash Dash. We're excited to be offering 4 different lengths of races, all certified courses, the 5K, the 10K, the competitive Lake Street Mile, and the Family Fun Run. In addition to that, we'll have Pumpkin Derby, which is just a hoot, and also pie eating contest. So all of that activity primarily will be down in the promenade area near the hotel landing. The races are largely on Lake Street, and then we'll go also up to the Loose Line as well as Highland neighborhoods. So that's primarily where the activities are. It's from 9 until noon for the most part. Packet pickup is also on Friday for 3 hours, from 3 to 6. So we're looking forward to those events. And then families are invited to come out with costumes. We have costume contests as well. If anybody's got any family members who would like to participate in any of these activities, registration is still open for all of those races up until 20 minutes before each race, the day of. And boy, I think that covers most of the things. And Boo Blast, that is where we've got the community can come out and do some trick-or-treating through the community businesses and that type of thing, and that's from 11 until 2, so those will overlap for a little bit, and that's also the same time frame that Lunds, they do a big gathering and have free hot dogs and photo opportunities and those kind of things outside Lunds, kind of on the east side of their building in that back parking lot. So those things all happen together, kind of one after another on Saturday.
Fantastic. Where do people find out where they can go trick-or-treating? On the Chamber website?
We have communicated that in conjunction with Boo Bash Dash, and what we have shared with businesses that we have, if they're interested in participating, we've got a little poster that they can put on their door or window, so people know who are the participating businesses to do that. So we hope that people take advantage of that if they choose to have people in their businesses or not, but that's the ideal and opportunity for people to let people know.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Good luck.
Yep, thank you very much, appreciate
Be a
it.
nice weekend.
The weather looks great, so that's nice, so we've
Yes.
had lots of interest.
So after fall, once we get through this, then we'll hope for cold and snow.
Very cold and snow.
Very cold and snow.
Well, less snow.
So we don't
because
have,
snow doesn't necessarily help the ice building, so
Oh,
we hope
boy.
for cold.
okay. Well, we'll
Sorry,
take,
everybody.
we'll take more than what we got last year.
Much more, about 18 inches more. Thank you
There you
very
go.
much.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. Just a moment. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I regret, I failed to mention one important other note. The council was made aware of this on Friday, but it's a sneak preview to, for the community members out there that you'll see in some of our communications, but I'll give it to Mike Kelly to provide a little bit of information about an award we won.
Yes, thank you, Manager Dahl. I nominated our Panaway project to the Minnesota chapter of the American Public Works Association, and am pleased to inform you that our project won the 2024 Project of the Year in the Structures category. We will accept our plaque at the fall conference at the end of November. I'm going to get lucky enough to make a brief presentation about the project to my peers and to everyone else. And the cool thing is since we won, our chapter will then forward our project onto the national organization for consideration for an award there as well. So
Very nice.
just wanted to pass that along, pat everybody on the back that had to do with this project, whether it be our agency partners, whether it be our contracting partners, obviously our construction management team, and obviously our staff, so,
And the community.
yeah, and the community.
Yes. And so who will be attending the conference?
We're still working on that.
To receive the award?
Yep, still working on that. I will be attending. It's a conference I attend every year. But we're working on who the right people are to attend as well. Most likely Civitas, maybe one of our contractor partners, maybe our construction management partner. So we're working on that invite list.
Very nice. Good. Well, congrats. That's great. And congrats to the council and all of you. I mean, everybody here has worked so hard for so long on that project, and it is very well deserved. So 10+ years in the making.
That's right.
Very good. All right. Anything else, City Manager? No? Councilmember Parco?
So I came in, I just want to I came into early vote the other day, and it was a super easy process, but I failed to really do my research before I got there on, there were a lot more things to vote on than I thought, you know? And so I would encourage people to review the ballot. I'm sure it's online somewhere, and make a decision on the judges on the back page, because there's a lot of them. And I think most people know if they're voting, you know, Harris or Trump, but I don't know if everybody knows about some of the local elections. So I would just encourage people to review them and make a choice. That's all.
Oh, great, great message. Those can be found at the Secretary of State's website. You can get a copy or view a copy of your ballot based on your address. It will also tell you where to vote. It gets a little tricky. Sometimes people have a 55391 zip code, but they're not necessarily a Wayzata resident, so you're not voting in Wayzata per se. But no, you're right. We've got federal, state, local elections. We have judges, so it's a long one this year. But Minnesota Secretary of State website. Very good. Good message. Anything else from the council? No? All right. And how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Wonderful. And a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.